Imagine that this minute, on this station, you received word that we had made contact with a civilization on another planet. The closest thing in human history to such an event took place in 1493, when news reached Europe that Columbus had encountered a new world. Two worlds that for thousands of years had developed completely independent of one another suddenly came into contact. It's a story that matters today for one reason above all others. In the years after contact, those two worlds painfully and haltingly began to merge. And as a result, the nature of identity and ethnicity in the Americas was dramatically transformed, right down to our own times. This is an entirely new look at the first century after contact.
When Worlds Collide is made possible by a major grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Democracy demands wisdom. By the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations, dedicated to strengthening America's future through education. By Deluxe Corporation Foundation, a supporter of education, the arts, and human services. By Tour España and the tourism boards of Andalusia and Madrid. And by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ruben Martinez, and these are my twin daughters, Ruby Graciela Garcia Martinez and Lucia Simon Garcia Martinez. I was born in this country, and I'm the son and grandson of immigrants from Mexico and Central America. But it's just a bit much to call myself a Mexican, Salvadoran American. Maybe that's why we hear the term Latino a lot these days. But what about my daughters? Their mother, and my wife, Angela Garcia, is from New Mexico, and her roots are Native American, Spanish, and Greek. There is no pithy identifier for Ruby and Lucia. They are simply mixed, or to use a word in Spanish for people of mixed ancestry, they are mestizas. The mixing of ethnicity that is Ruby and Lucia's heritage began during one of the most dynamic eras of history, when Europeans first made contact with the native peoples of the Americas. The collision of those two worlds would famously result in the conquest of the new by the old. But to understand the deeper consequences, it's essential to take a new look at what those two worlds were really like, at how they were changed by contact, and what it means today to live in both of them at the same time. Sometimes children get curious about their family tree. Where did their parents come from? What were their grandparents or great-grandparents like? But what if circumstances erase the story of one side of the family? Then, the desire to know can go beyond mere curiosity and become an urgent need. That's a little bit what it's been like down through the years to be a mestizo, to have some ancestors native to Europe and some native to the Americas. The story of the European side of the family tree before contact has long been widely known. But it has taken far longer for the true story of the peoples of the New World to become accepted by popular culture. Instead, for the last 500 years, the conventional narrative has been that the Americas were filled with backwards peoples who were easily defeated by a vastly superior European culture. But finally, in recent years, as more and more of us have felt compelled to explore all of our roots, our view of the New World has started to change. Take, for example, Machu Picchu, the spiritual retreat of the Inca. When I was a child, there was popular speculation that Machu Picchu and other wonders like it in the ancient Americas were designed by aliens. So great was the disbelief that indigenous Americans were capable of such feats. But now we know that Machu Picchu and great South American metropolises like Cusco and Cajamarca were indeed the work of the Quechua Indians, who still live and thrive in Peru. Carlos Paz Sanchez is the director of the Peruvian Cultural Center in Cusco.
Primero, que no son indígenas, ¿no? O sea, hay una cosa más o menos de ignorancia. O sea, donde estamos sentados es la máxima expresión de una cultura mayor. Es una muestra de la tecnología, tanto de ingeniería, hidráulica, arquitectura, el hombre prehispánico o los incas, la relación que tenían con la naturaleza, digamos, ¿no? Que básicamente su ideología estaba basada en el equilibrio del hombre y la tierra. Entonces, este es un santuario y como santuario más o menos se ve el equilibrio hombre y naturaleza. O sea, no la destruye, sino se adecua más o menos a la parte arquitectónica y de la forma de la naturaleza.
Machu Picchu was built with a standard of precision much greater than European artisans at the time were capable of. And, thanks to discoveries like it, scholars have long known that, before contact, South America and North America were home to some of the greatest cultures of the age. The Inca Empire was far larger than any in Europe, stretching 2,000 miles from modern-day Colombia to Chile. A vast network of stone roads snaked through jungles and over mountain passes to bring the tribute and labor that the Inca coerced from conquered peoples back to their capital in present-day Peru. In central Mexico, a major civilization had thrived at the same time as the Romans. Following in its footsteps came the Mayans with their advanced mathematics and writing, and the Mexica, leaders of the Triple Alliance we once called the Aztecs. The Mexica capital of Tenochtitlan was home to 200,000 people and cleaner than any city in Europe. Still farther north, there were a host of other civilizations, including the Pueblo tribes, with their planned communities built around one of the most sophisticated social structures in the world, and the great cultures of the Mississippi River Valley, who were among the most successful and productive farmers on Earth. None of this means that these cultures were better than the cultures of Europe, nor worse, but simply different. One of the most important differences was that the greatest advances of New World culture did not involve inventing new machines, but were instead driven by the intelligent use and management of the natural environment. For instance, New World inventors made a major advance in perhaps the major industry of the age, textile manufacturing, by creating a red so true that Europeans swooned for it at first sight. In the old world, the textile industry dominated the economy. But almost all the red cloth it produced was really dirty orange. Dye that could produce true red was so rare and expensive in Europe that only the rich and powerful wore red. But people in the Americas had figured out how to mass produce a true red dye by growing and harvesting cochineal, an insect which lives on prickly pear cactus. It was such an important breakthrough that Europeans would one day rank it only behind gold and silver in value. Antonio Ruiz Gonzalez and his family still produce textiles using cochineal dye.
Pre-Hispanic people taught us how to use this bug. These bugs grow up on a prickly pear cactus. They live there absorbing the juice of the cactus. That's why the natives, the pre-Hispanic people, also know them by the bleeding of the cactus.
The discovery of true red gave birth to a large network of small entrepreneurs who produced the dye and then sold it to textile manufacturers, painters, and other artisans along trade routes that stretched for thousands of miles. Those traders also sold a vastly more important set of inventions made possible by the talent of the peoples of the New World for managing nature. New kinds of food. At this botanical garden in Oaxaca, a botanist is growing a weed called teocintle. It's a very special weed, the point of origin of one of the great food revolutions in history. This is the tiny seed pod of the teocintle plant. Many centuries ago, indigenous Americans succeeded in turning this into maíz, corn. Today, many botanists consider the transformation of teocintle into corn the most important feat of genetic engineering in human history. At the Tortilleria Itatoni in Oaxaca, tortillas are made from some of the earliest varieties of corn still in existence, what you might call heirloom tortillas. Amado Ramirez Leiva is an agronomist and the owner of Itatoni.
Primero, el maíz es un invento humano. Es una hechura y una hacedura de los hombres. No existía maíz hace más de 10,000 años.
Entonces lo que vemos aquí no solo son granos de maíz, sino son símbolos de una historia.
Y no solamente símbolo, es símbolo y producto. Y vivió junto con los mesoamericanos, con los americanos, su propia historia.
By weight, more corn is harvested today than any other crop in the world. And when corn was first introduced as a staple crop in the ancient Americas, it made tremendous population growth possible, from the Mayan Peninsula all the way to what is today the United States and Canada. In fact, some scholars today think that there may have been millions more people living in the Americas before Columbus arrived than was once thought. Those people lived not just on corn, but also on a host of other crops, like potatoes and tomatoes, that they were the first to domesticate. That's why other scholars believe that the average person in the Americas might have been better fed than the average person in Europe. They might also have been healthier, because there were no pigs, goats, cows, and the like. There was also no smallpox or measles or similar diseases that people on other continents caught from those animals. What it all adds up to is this. Before contact between the New World and the Old, you could well have been better off if you were an average person in the Americas than an average person in Europe. It's a revelation that triggers an entirely new way of looking at the new world. Now, let's take a new look at the old world.